They said I was being dramatic while I stared up at the sky, legs dead, lungs burning, and my brother laughed. By midnight, there would be blue lights outside my parents' house and fingerprint powder smeared across the edge of their brand new pool. If you've ever had your pain dismissed by the people who were supposed to protect you, tell me where you're listening from. Tap like, hit subscribe, and settle in because this is the story of how one prank turned my family into defendants and turned me into someone I barely recognized in the best possible way. My name is Noelle Hart. I'm 28, a middle school art teacher, and for most of my life, I was cast in a role nobody asked me to audition for: the sensitive, overreacting little sister. On the outside, the Harts looked like brochure-ready perfection. Sage green colonial in a tidy neighborhood on the north side of Boulder, a dad who wore crisp shirts and shook hands like he was closing a deal even at the grocery store, a mother whose hair and smile never moved, and two kids who collected honor roll certificates like trading cards. On the inside, eggs, shells, everywhere. My father, Gregory, learned toughness from his own father, a man who considered emotions to be a kind of flab. Pain is just your brain whining, Dad would say, as if the body were a stubborn lawnmower that needed a firmer pull. He passed that creed down to us, especially to his firstborn, my brother, Chase. You can picture Chase at any age: captain's grin, expensive sneakers, the kind of charisma that looks like good lighting. He understood very early that there was magic in being a son in our house. He could set the table on fire and my parents would blame the matches. Me? Thicken your skin, Noelle, Dad would say when I was 5 and scraped my knees. Quit the theatrics, Noelle, Mom would add when I was 15 and exhausted from the flu. It became the family soundtrack. Minimizing, dismissing, moving on. The first time the world taught me not to trust my own hurt, I was 8. Chase and his best friend Wesley stuffed black snake fireworks into my backpack and lit them as a joke while we waited for the bus. Smoke curled around my lunchbox. I screamed. A teacher dragged us away. Later, when I told my parents, Chase swore it was an accident and Mom wrinkled her nose at the smell clinging to my jacket. Honestly, honey, if you didn't make such a big deal of everything, people wouldn't tease you. I spent that night sitting in the bathtub, scrubbing out soot until my fingers stung. At 12, he locked me in the garden shed during a thunderstorm because I wouldn't give up the swing. At 16, he swapped the labels on the chemicals for my art project so my sculpture slumped into mush an hour before judging. Each time I pleaded, each time my parents leaned over me with sympathetic smiles that weren't sympathetic at all, explaining that boy's roughhouse, that I shouldn't provoke him, that I should stop creating drama. It felt like living in a house with a funhouse mirror where my reflection came back wrong, stretched and ridiculous. College was my first breath of unscented air. I left state, rented a tiny attic that smelled like coffee, made friends who asked how I was and actually waited for the answer. I learned to be alone without being lonely. I got my degree, then a job guiding 7th graders away from charcoal smudges and into color. Therapy helped me stitch a little courage where the old fabric had worn thin. But the rope tied to home is long and elastic. It snaps you back for the holidays. It whispers obligations. When Mom called in early summer to announce that Dad had installed a beautiful cedar deck around their new lap pool and that Chase's 30-second lap around the sun would be celebrated there, she said, "It would mean so much if you came," in the tone she saved for church and charity. I hesitated. I heard my therapist's voice. "You're an adult. Your boundaries are valid. You can say no." Then the familiar twin prongs of guilt and hope poked me in the ribs. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe. So I packed a weekend bag, booked a room at a budget hotel instead of staying in my childhood bed, and rehearsed my exit lines in the car for 2 hours of highway and foothills. I wore dark jeans, a sea blue blouse, flats with grippy soles, neutral enough for Dad, true enough for me. In the glove box, a simple card with $200 tucked inside. We already bought his present, Mom had said over the phone, sweet as syrup. Wait till you see it. The driveway was a carousel of expensive cars when I pulled up, an Obsidian SUV, a pearl-white convertible, the kind of sculpted motorcycles that need names. Music pulsed faintly through the walls. Mom opened the door with a quick air kiss and a scanning glance that measured hemline, hair, and posture in one smooth motion. You made it. Everyone's out back. Chase already opened his gifts. Oh, your father found the most perfect thing. She gestured at the kitchen island with its parade of tissue paper and boxes, a high-end drone, a leather duffel, monogrammed golf balls. A glossy photo sat propped against a bottle of champagne, a jet-black jet ski, an arrow-sharp toy for the lake. Isn't it handsome? She cooed. For my last birthday, I got a $50 card with a flower on it. I know, comparison is a thief. But the sting arrived anyway, uninvited, and sat beside me like a shadow. Out back, 40 people lounged on the new deck, the cedars still pale butter and smelling like a summer camp cabin. The pool was narrow and gleaming, sun striping it like fish scales. Dad manned the grill with the intensity of a camp commander, tongs snapping, meat sizzling, an American flag dish towel tucked at his hip. Chase, in a shirt the color of wet asphalt and sunglasses pushed to the top of his head like a crown, was encircled by men with the same satisfied smirk. A stack of empties clinked under the table. Our old neighbor, Mrs. Whitney, perched on a chair, squeezing her ankles together the way she always used to. Look who finally descended from the art loft, Chase called when he spotted me, sliding in for a hug that was part tackle, part performance. Lil sis. Boulder's own Banksy. He smelled like citrus and beer. His hand thumped my back a fraction too hard. Happy birthday, I said, stepping away and keeping the smile of a polite stranger. The deck cost a fortune, he announced to the circle as if I'd asked. Dad insisted on the premium sealant. You could ice skate on this stuff. The men laughed. I filed that sentence under foreshadowing I didn't recognize. For the first hour, I played party ghost. I stood at the edge of the conversation, refilled water, complimented a baby's shoes, pointed a lost cousin to the bathroom. Every time Chase told a story, it bloomed into a hero myth about him. The time he rescued our neighbor from a raccoon after throwing rocks at it. The time he saved me from a bad haircut by convincing me to let him even it out and creating a lopsided bob that took months to fix. Noelle used to faint if anyone said blood, he said now, and the men guffawed. Remember Wes? In 6th grade? She saw a paper cut and hit the floor. It wasn't true. But in our family, his version always won. I let it slide off me like rain on a summer window, or at least I tried to. When he pivoted to remember when we told her the pond leeches would crawl up her legs, and someone mimed shrieking, heat climbed into my cheeks. 2 women across from me, a wife and a girlfriend, shared a quick look and a small grimace. We were a strange sisterhood, the partners and sisters of golden boys. I decided to leave before the mood turned mean, the way it always did once the sun slid down and the bottles emptied. I could get to my hotel, take a shower, braid my hair, put my bones to bed. My purse was inside. I'm going to run, I told Mom, who was arranging a tray of deviled eggs like soldiers. Early day tomorrow. I'll call you. You're forever darting off, she said, keeping her smile pinned on for a pair of entering neighbors. At least say goodbye to your brother. But her eyes were grateful, less chance that I'd upset the choreography. Chase intercepted me before I reached the sliding door. Leaving already? Noelle, you're allergic to fun. Come on, do a shot with me for old time's sake. His pupils were glossy. The charm in his voice had a serrated edge. I'm driving, I said, aiming for lightness. And I have to prep lessons. You draw circles for a living. He planted himself between me and the doorway, widening his stance. 1 drink. Don't be so precious. That was the word he always chose for me when he wanted to cut. Precious. Soft. Fragile. Something you could break and then tell it to stop breaking. Move, I said, and something in my tone made him blink. He faltered, then smiled a knife smile and stepped to the side. Suit yourself. The cedar boards were smooth under my shoes. The sun made everyone look painted. I took 3 steps toward the door and the world vanished from under me. There wasn't even a skid. Just a betraying shimmer under my feet, then a split second of nothing, then my heels shot forward like someone had yanked a rug. In that assassin pause, I saw details with surgical clarity. The red of the cooler lid, Dad lifting the grill to peek at a steak, Mom's pearls pressed our neck, the exact shape of Chase's mouth, already forming a laugh. My shoulder clipped the deck, my lower back slammed into the stone coping around the pool, and my skull rattled against concrete. For a second there was white, a blooming white full of bees, then sky, and the taste of copper. "Oh my," someone said. The rest of the sentence lost itself in the music. I lay still because there was nothing else to do. Pain sang from my spine, a clean, horrible note. I tried to sit up and my torso trembled like a broken metronome. I tried to bend my knees and nothing happened. The thought rose quiet and absolute. My legs aren't here. They're attached, I could see them, neat in my jeans and flats, and they were as reachable as the moon. "Help," I said. It came out like air escaping a balloon. I gulped for the rest of the words. I can't feel my legs. The first face in my vision was Chase. He loomed, blocking the sun, and he was grinning. "Huh. Oh my God. That fall. You should have been a stunt double." He turned his head. "Did you see that?" She practically levitated. People laughed because that's what people do when someone like Chase tells them which cue card to read. "I'm not joking," I said. I didn't recognize the sound, reedy, strange, coming from my body. Something's wrong. I swallowed hard. "Please, call an ambulance." Dad strode over, irritation already gathering like storm clouds in his brow. "Noelle, get up." "I can't." The sky wobbled. My fingers tingled, which seemed impossible because they were not the ones who had betrayed me. "The deck is perfectly fine," he said, like I had insulted his craftsmanship. "It was sealed yesterday. We paid good money. Stop making a spectacle of yourself and move. People are watching." "Gregory," someone murmured. Mom appeared in my peripheral vision, her mouth thin. Her smile for the neighbors remained fixed. "Mom," I whispered. "I can't." Tears slid into my ears. "I can't move my legs. I need a hospital." She crouched quickly, her perfume filling my nose, and hissed, for once, "Don't hijack your brother's day." I think I stopped breathing from surprise before I stopped from fear. There was a tiny commotion at the fringe of the crowd. A woman I didn't recognize knelt beside me so fast it was like she'd teleported. She had her hair in a messy bun and a small silver hoop in one eyebrow. "I'm Maya," she said, fingers at my wrist, at my neck. "I'm an orthopedic nurse. Don't move anything. Do you understand?" "Nothing." "Where's the pain worst?" "My back," I said. "My head." "I can't feel. I didn't get to finish." My stomach heaved without warning. She turned my head with careful hands and held my hair away while my body tried to purge the shock, the fear, the humiliation. Mom took a half step back, her shoes safe. "Is that really necessary?" she asked when Maya reached for her phone. "We can take her to urgent care." "Ma'am," Maya said in a voice that brooked no argument, "your daughter shows signs of a spinal injury. She does not need a car ride. She needs a trauma team and a backboard." Dad puffed up. "You can't come into my home, and please stand back," Maya said calmly, and somehow he did. While she relayed our address and my symptoms to a dispatcher, she pressed down my knees, my ankles. "Tell me if you feel this," she said. I closed my eyes. Nothing. It was like screaming into a canyon and hearing no echo. When I opened them, her face was composed, but fury flashed like lightning deep in her eyes. What did she slip on?" someone asked. Maya rubbed her thumb and forefinger together and held them up, glossy. "This isn't water." A chill ran up my arms. The deck gleamed. It didn't look wet. It looked slicked, treated, like a cutting board oiled for a photograph. Heads turned to Chase. His tan went a shade bleached. He spread his hands, tried on the grin. It didn't fit. It was a joke. I smeared a little silicone spray on the boards. I thought he drew a shape in the air with his hand, slide into the pool. Like splash. That's all. He laughed alone. I didn't mean. Silence moved through the backyard like a tide. I lay very still and watched my world rearrange itself, the way old picture frames tilt when a train passes miles away. The shriek of sirens keened closer. Maya kept a palm at my sternum, steadying my head with the other. "Breathe for me. In. Out. Ignore them." Paramedics pushed through the gate. 2 women and a man with faces built for emergencies, soft where people need softness, granite where no one else can go hard. "I'm Joe," the taller woman said, kneeling, her voice a warm anchor. "This is Malik, this is Andy." "Okay, Noelle, we're going to take care of you. Don't try to help us. Just stay exactly as you are." They slid a collar under my neck, wrapped it snug, counted in unison, and rolled me in a perfect, terrifying choreography, my insides blazing, to slide the board beneath me. Joe's hands were magic and steel. Pain on a scale of 10? 11 I managed, because humor is a life raft, and climbed right back into the wave. Copy. For coming. Cold washed up my arm. O2 flowed past my mouth. Numbers beeped. Joe looked up, following Maya's nod. "Is that lubricant?" Maya didn't look away from my face. "Feels like it. Brother says it was a prank." Joe's mouth flattened. "Malik, document the surface, please." Malik took photographs, crouched, scraped a glistening sample into a sterile tube. "And call for a unit," Joe added. "We'll need officers on scene." Dad barked, "What for?" "This is ridiculous." She slipped. Joe's eyes met his with a professionalism that was, itself, a verdict. "Sir, intentionally creating a hazard that results in a serious injury is not an oops. Also, I'm told there was a delay in calling for help after she reported being unable to move her legs. We'll transport now." They lifted. The sky moved. Faces leaned and receded like study models. Wesley tugged at his cap, staring at the boards like they might answer a question. Mom murmured, "We're all very stressed," to no one in particular. Chase stood as if he'd lost bones. They wheeled me through the living room I grew up in, a gallery of family photos where I had always been slightly out of focus, and into sun and noise. As the ambulance doors closed, a police cruiser slid to the curb, lights pulsing soundlessly. Relief flooded me so suddenly I nearly sobbed. For the first time in the Hart household, somebody believed me enough to show up. Morphine softens time. I drifted in a slow, bright fog where memories ran beneath the surface like fish, 4th grade, paint under my fingernails, high school, the night I snuck into the yard during a meteor shower and wished for a horizon that didn't have fences, college, my roommate's cat kneading my stomach while I cried after a bad call from home. Then the light was different and air smelled antiseptic and someone was saying my name in a room that hummed. "Hi, Noelle. You're at Summit Valley Medical." A nurse with gentle hands and an accent I couldn't place leaned into view. Her badge read C. Chiloyan Navy letters. "You've been in and out. You had surgery overnight. I'm going to get the doctor, okay?" "Surgery?" The word clicked into place like a coin into a slot, and dread washed after it. I tried to flex my toes. The sheet was a blank wall. I swallowed. My mouth tasted like metal and cotton. A small woman in navy scrubs and a white coat slid into the room with a presence that stitched the air. "I'm DR. Ling Nguyen, neurosurgery," she said, sitting at eye level instead of looming. "I wish I were meeting you in different circumstances." "How bad?" I asked, my chest creaking like an old door. "Be honest." She was. "You suffered a fracture at the junction of your thoracic and lumbar spine. A fragment pressed against the spinal cord. We took you to the OR to relieve the pressure and stabilize the area with screws and rods. Your skin shows what we call an incomplete injury. Some pathways are damaged, but not all." I stared at the ceiling tile above her left shoulder, a tiny brown speck like a birthmark. "Will I walk?" Her pause was a real thing, held carefully weighted. "We can't promise that. Some people with incomplete injuries regain a surprising amount of function. Others don't. Right now, you can't move your legs. That could change with time and aggressive therapy, or it might not. I won't give you false certainty either way." The words passed through me like weather. For a long time, I didn't react. Then tears came all at once, hot and humiliating. I kept saying I needed help, I whispered. They told me to stop acting. Dr. Nguyen's eyes softened. "The speed of care matters with these injuries. We can't rewind the clock, but I will say plainly, you did the right thing asking for help. The people around you failed to hear you quickly enough." A police detective with a neat ponytail and steady voice came later that morning with a uniformed officer who introduced himself as Officer Delaney. "I'm Detective Grace Park," she said. "I'm sorry to do this while you're in pain, but details fade fast." She took my statement. I told her about the shimmer on the boards, the way Chase blocked the door, my father's "get up," my mother's whisper. Maya and Joe had already given theirs, she said. Malik's photographs and the testing of the sample matched a high-slip silicone spray. "Your brother admitted on scene that he applied it," Detective Park added, voice neutral. "We took him into custody last night on suspicion of reckless assault causing serious bodily injury." The phrase made my stomach flip. "And my parents?" "Under review," she said. "We're coordinating with the DA's office regarding failure to render aid." I know this is a lot. "If you need to stop, no," I said, and found that my voice had a core in it made of something other than fear. "Finish." When she was gone, a social worker named Jorge arrived, earnest and kind, and explained words I never expected to learn: inpatient rehab, durable medical equipment, modifications, adaptive driving. "You won't be thrown in the deep end," he promised. "We walk with you." He left me with a stack of pamphlets and a cup of broth. My phone lay on the tray, gray and silent. No texts from Mom. None from Dad. None from Chase, of course. It was like an old play had been called off mid-scene and the actors had forgotten their lines. Pain makes days strange and elastic. The first week blur-hopped through beeps and check-ins. Dr. Gwynn spoke to me every morning in the kind of straightforward way you reserve for people you respect. "You've got some sensation in your thighs today," she said on day 3, her smile small but genuine. That's encouraging. Encouraging became my favorite word, even when the encouragement was a whisper instead of a shout. On day 5, I met Assistant District Attorney Samantha Reed. Her brain was a lighthouse, sharp and steady, and it flicked across my life with a sweep that left me both exposed and reassured. "This is how we proceed," she said. "Chase will almost certainly be charged with a felony, reckless injury causing serious bodily harm. Your parents' conduct is under review for criminal negligence given the delay in seeking aid. You have rights as a victim. You also have choices to make regarding civil action." Civil, I repeated, like I was trying out a word in a language I used to know. "Like suing my own family? Like ensuring your lifetime care isn't at the mercy of their whims," she said gently. "Medical equipment, home modifications, therapy, they add up. Their homeowner's insurance may cover a slice. A personal injury attorney can advise you about the rest. This isn't about revenge. It's about survival." I hired Ethan Cole, a lawyer with kind eyes and an unforgiving filing system. He read the police reports, the paramedic notes, Dr. Nguyen's operative report. "I'm very sorry you're here," he said, "and we're going to make sure you're taken care of." He talked about numbers in a way that felt more like building a bridge than sending a bill. They made choices. Choices have consequences. 2 weeks after the injury, an ambulance took me to Front Range Rehabilitation Institute, where the hallways smelled faintly of eucalyptus and determination. In the therapy gym the first day, the light poured through windows tall as ambitions. Everything hummed: treadmills, stationary bikes, a rack of braces like futuristic boots. "I'm Ash," my physical therapist said, a red-bearded man with a mountain biker's calves and the patience of a saint. "My job isn't to promise miracles. My job is to help your body find every pathway it still has and build new detours around the damage." It's astonishing how complicated simple things become. Transferring from bed to wheelchair was a dance learned in centimeters, not steps. Sitting upright without fainting was a victory. The first time Ash stood me between parallel bars, fastening long leg braces around me, I thought my heart would jump out of my throat. "We'll go slow," he said. "We'll stop if your blood pressure dips. You tell me if you feel dizzy. You tell me everything." "I've been told my whole life to be quiet," I said, and he grinned. "Welcome to the opposite." There were ugly days where the spasms in my legs were lightening and the bowel program humbled me until I sobbed with the door locked and the fan on. There were glorious days where the signal between brain and muscles sputtered to life, and I could coax my hips to wake up, a millimeter at a time. Maya visited once with flowers and a fierce hug that didn't jostle a single tube. Joe popped by on a Saturday during her off hours, dropping off a gift card for takeout. "You'll be amazed at yourself," she said, and told me about a former patient who learned to kayak again. My phone stayed mostly silent. Ethan forwarded updates from the legal side. Chase's attorney had advised a plea. My parents hired a firm with a name like a stainless fridge and put out a press statement that used words like misunderstanding and accident and our love for our daughter. I stopped reading after the third sentence because the truth has a very specific shape and none of those words fit it. 3 months in, there was a hearing. I sat in the front row of the courtroom in my chair, wearing the dress I'd bought long ago for an opening at a gallery. The hum of the AC was constant. When they brought Chase in through a side door, I gasped, not because he looked different, he didn't, but because seeing him in a place where his charm didn't work felt like a reversal I hadn't dared imagine. He didn't look at me. He looked small, only for a second, then his chin tipped up. The judge read the charge. He pled guilty to a felony count of reckless injury causing serious bodily harm in exchange for a recommended sentence of 5 years, 2 to be served in prison, 3 on probation, plus restitution. He signed the paper with the same flourish he used on bar tabs. He didn't turn. He didn't say my name. My parents' case resolved without a trial. 2 years of probation, mandatory community service at the hospital, a requirement to attend a course on bystander responsibility. They did not plead guilty to criminal negligence, but the deferred judgment read like a scolding from a disappointed teacher. "I'm certain," the judge said evenly, "that you both understand the stakes of ignoring a cry for help now." The civil case took longer and carved grooves through my patience I didn't know existed. Depositions felt like weird theater. Lawyers asked whether I might have slipped even without silicone, whether my shoes were appropriate, whether I was sure I hadn't, added to the delay by being hysterical. Ethan objected so calmly it was almost an art form. "Counsel is badgering," he'd murmur. He laid out the math of my future with charts and notes and experts. The cost of a shower chair, a ramp, custom braces, catheter supplies, outpatient PT. He spoke about my lost wages for the months I wasn't in the classroom. He translated the line between grief and rage into dollars and affidavits, like a priest reading a map during a storm. 6 months after filing, we reached a settlement. The homeowner's policy paid the maximum, $1.25 million. My parents agreed to sell the house I'd grown up in and use the equity to establish a trust of an additional $1.6 million for my care. They would keep their condo in Florida. They would keep their separate accounts. I thought I'd feel triumph. Instead, there was a steadier feeling, like a floor. Like, for the first time, if I looked down, there was something under my feet. Rehab folded me into its rhythm. I learned to drive again with hand controls and ugly good pride. The first time I merged onto the highway alone, I laughed aloud, shocked sound. I moved back into an accessible garden apartment with a ramp that curled like a question mark and doorways wide enough to exhale through. A part-time caregiver named Ruth taught me tricks that should be passed down like family recipes: how to tug a boot off with a loop of fabric, how to keep a water bottle between your knees while transferring, which grocery stores actually put the heavy things at reachable heights. The school district offered me a new position, curriculum specialist for arts and social-emotional learning. I could build programs from home, lead workshops, occasionally will into a classroom, and remind a room of 11-year-olds that art is where you put the feelings that don't fit anywhere else. The first time I rolled into a school's multipurpose room to lead a training, I felt the tiniest stab in my ribs, fear of the curious and cruel looks I remembered from my own childhood. Then a boy raised his hand and said, "Your wheels are sick," and I laughed until my eyes watered. 1 year after the fall, I got a letter with a prison stamp on the corner and Chase's messy handwriting in slanting lines. I left it on the counter for 3 days, moving it around the way you move a thing you're avoiding, on top of the microwave, under the pile of catalogs, into the bowl with my keys, because my body remembered too well the sensation of hoping he'd be kind and the crash when he wasn't. When I finally opened it, my eyes scanned for the word sorry. It was there, not just once. He wrote about counseling. He wrote about learning the difference between a prank and cruelty. He wrote that he didn't expect forgiveness and meant it. He wrote that he'd replayed the moment 1,000 times, me on the deck, his laugh hanging in the air like a hangman's rope, and wished he could tape it back into his throat. I set the paper down and stared at the corner of my kitchen where the sun finds the plants in late afternoon. Feelings surged and receded, surged and receded. Forgiveness is not a switch. It's more like an old radio you're not sure how to tune. I wrote back, 3 sentences, not unkind, not inviting. I received your letter. I'm focusing on my recovery. I hope you continue your counseling. Months ticked. My dad sent an email forwarding an article about accessible home design with a note, thought of you. My mother sent a card with embossed lilies for the holidays and wrote, "We miss you," in a hand that didn't match the words. I wrote back with updates the way you'd write a newsletter to a distant acquaintance. Boundaries, I learned, are love notes to your future self. Meanwhile, a different kind of family, one that hums to a different frequency, got bigger. Maya invited me to a picnic for nurses and patients where the potato salad was a little too warm and the laughter was the exact temperature it should be. Jo and her wife taught me how to make dumplings and rolled their eyes when I made too many jokes about wheelchair height being perfect for counter work. Ash introduced me to adaptive rock climbing, and I learned that fear and awe are cousins who sometimes hold hands on a wall. At Front Range, I started volunteering as a peer mentor, rolling into rooms where the air smelled like bleach and despair and saying, "Hi, I'm you in some number of months, and the view's not as bad out here as you think." That's where I met Rowan, a physical therapist who specialized in neurological injuries and had a habit of talking to his patients the way people talk to their plants, soft, encouraging, with a kind of cheerful expectation that growth is inevitable if you keep showing up with light and water. He wasn't my therapist, ethics and all that, but he started sitting with me and Tara, a woman my age with a spinal cord injury from a climbing fall and a sly sense of humor, after our peer sessions. We'd argue about which fast casual place had the best fries and which trail had the most generous shade. He asked before he helped. He never made my chair invisible or overly important. When he asked me to coffee, I said yes with a stomach full of butterflies and a head full of caution signs. When he asked, 2 months later, whether I wanted to try a pottery class together, I heard my old self whisper, "Isn't that messy?" And my new self say, "Messy is a kind of prayer." 2 years after the fall we did an anniversary, I never wanted quietly. I went to the pool, not that pool. I don't know if I'll ever touch that water again, and I lay on a chaise at the public rec center while Rowan sat on the edge and kicked his feet. My leg braces leaned against my chair like silver ladders. My scars were pale and honest. I watched a toddler in a floppy hat stomp at the lip of shallow water, and I felt both an ache and a grazing joy. My body now is a map with some roads closed and a dozen brilliant detours. I can stand with long braces and take careful steps with forearm crutches for short distances, kitchen to couch, porch to mailbox. I use my chair the way people use cars, to go farther, to go faster, to go with less pain. Sensation in my legs comes and goes like radio stations in the mountains, sometimes tinny, sometimes rich, sometimes static. Pain is a roommate who pays rent late but brings flowers once in a while. I do not trust days that are too easy. I do not despair on days that are too hard. It turns out you can hold both. As for revenge, people ask quietly, as if they're worried about asking for something dirty. Here is what I know. Revenge isn't always a dramatic reveal with a soundtrack. Sometimes revenge is living a life designed to fit your bones instead of other people's expectations. Sometimes it's watching a judge tell your parents that ignoring a desperate child is not a family value. It's a crime. Sometimes it's seeing the man who laughed at your pain stand in front of the court and say the word guilty in his own voice. Sometimes it's a trust fund in your name paid for by people who told you money was tight when you were the one who needed braces on your teeth, not your legs. Sometimes it's stepping brace by brace into your kitchen to stir pasta sauce, humming to yourself, and feeling happy, fully, without an apology in sight. I didn't get the apology I wanted from my parents. I got the one I didn't expect from my brother. I didn't get my old body back. I made a home in the one I have. I didn't get the family I was born into to change. I found a family that behaves like a family should when sirens wail, when soup spills, when grief sidles up at 3 a.m. Last month, I finished a graduate certificate in trauma-informed education because my students are not just paint and clay, they are children with locked sheds of their own. This fall, I'll start a district-wide program training teachers to recognize the quiet signals of kids who learn too early that their feelings are inconveniences. On the first slide of my presentation, there's a photograph of a hand reaching into a pool of ultramarine, pigment blooming like galaxies. The caption says, "Believe them the first time." If you're hearing this and your voice has been called too much, if you've been told to walk it off when your legs won't move or your heart can't bear it, know this. Your pain is not a trick. Your body is not a liar. There are people whose instinct at the sound of suffering is to lean in, not away. Find them. Be one. And if this story landed in your chest the way it did in mine when I lived it, drop a comment. Let me know where you're listening from and share it with someone who needs to hear that healing is messy and miraculous and not linear. Hit subscribe if you want more stories about turning harm into something useful, even beautiful. I don't know the exact outline of my future any more than I do the weather next Tuesday. Dr. Gwynn says improvement can surprise you years after you think the book has closed. I like that. Surprise me. Or don't. Either way, I'll be here, stirring sauce, wheeling fast down the ramp, taking my steps when I can, laughing with Rowan in a pottery studio while we make bowls that wobble and mugs that are a little too thick, singing with my chosen family over dumplings, telling a 7th grader that their messy painting is perfect in ways they can't see yet. 2 summers ago, I left a party flat on my back, counting clouds and wondering whether I'd ever stand again. Today I stand in my kitchen, braces hugging my shins, hand on the counter, breath steady, and I think, I am not who they said I was. I am not even who I said I was. I am someone new. And that is a kind of revenge no one can take back.